Hello, Sumeet. Thank you and welcome to the show. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Sumeet Singh from Juniper Networks. At Juniper, I lead the AppFormix team.
AppFormix. Now we're here to discuss AppFormix. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
So AppFormix is a cloud service optimization platform. It's tooling for operators to do, advanced analytics, monitoring, performance management, scheduling for their software-defined infrastructure and applications.
And in terms of what that covers, we have spoken just before the show about the proliferation of multi-cloud, all of these different environments. So when you talk about the analytics and making the operations more streamlined, how does that work with AppFormix?
So what we see is this increasing trend where more and more users or operators are building software-defined infrastructure. You're using something Kubernetes, you're using OpenStack, and at the same time, you're also using the public cloud. You're using Azure, you're using Google, you're using Amazon. What you can do with the AppFormix software is build that layer of performance management that spans your entire software-defined cloud environment, whether it be on-prem or in the public cloud. In this single platform, you can get telemetry from each of those individual components. You can run the analysis, you can do alarms, or you can do the advanced scheduling of your workload that spans that multi-cloud environment.
And how did AppFormix come into being? I mean, it seems that it's the right application at the right time, but you've been working on this for a number of years now.
Yeah, so AppFormix actually, I started AppFormix 4 years ago. And previously, prior to starting AppFormix, I was working at Microsoft. But going way back, to my years at in graduate school, I was working in this space of analytics, systems, networking, and then back then I had developed this pretty cool piece of software that ended up being my first startup that was acquired by Cisco. But then just over the years, just learning more in the field, and then eventually ending up at Microsoft. And then at Microsoft, I was helping build cloud at Azure, running the cloud. And then that's when you realize, when you're actually running cloud, when you're actually an operator, you realize how difficult it is. It's an absolute nightmare. Moving to software-defined clearly gives you more control, but it also increases the complexity of managing the infrastructure. And at some point, in that journey in Microsoft, my wife basically told me that your life's hell, even a startup would be better than this. And that's where I was like, perhaps, yeah, maybe it's time to go do a startup. And, that's essentially where AppFormix started. I left Microsoft and then, started on this journey to build a new set of tools for operators that makes operations really easy.
So giving the ops guys a good night's sleep was the main driver behind this piece of software.
It was, and it still is.
Where do you see AppFormix going now that you've got a foundation?
So we see several trends happening in the industry, and AppFormix clearly participates and plays a large role in many of those. The first one is this big drive towards 5G and edge computing, right? You see, all of the telcos building these distributed clouds, and historically, Juniper has had a very good relation with all of these telcos. And as these telcos now build these clouds with AppFormix, they can, operate those clouds. They can automate the operations, and they can essentially optimize them and performance manage them in a more effective way. So that's one space where we have great traction. The other trend, is and where we started this discussion is this whole thing about whether we want to call it multi-cloud or hybrid cloud, where enterprises are building new infrastructure that spans this world of private and public, and then for them to deliver that consistent service to their users, their app developers. They can use AppFormix in that space to performance manage that application and the infrastructure across across that environment. And then, of course, if these are the big trends, but then if we just think about how software is delivered, we are seeing this big trend towards folks adopting containers, and that's another space where AppFormix has a large role to play.
And we've seen this not just in telcos, but in banking, where there are lots of different systems. These are big companies, they do a lot of acquisitions, they have different infrastructure in different countries, and now when you talk about public clouds, different public clouds in different territories.
Right.
AppFormix can come in, centralize and streamline the operations for those companies.
Yes.
And what's the deployment like? I know most people look at these change management situations and just kind of hide from them, but how does AppFormix fit in there?
So, we took a long time at AppFormix to build our software. And really, my perspective was that if you're building operations tooling, you got to make sure it's very easy to deploy and operate the operations tooling, otherwise you're not going to use it. If that's adding overhead, then it's really not helping you. And it took us a long time, but I feel we got it right. And AppFormix is an entirely software solution, right? It's packaged up in containers. It's actually really easy to deploy. We use Ansible to automate all of the deployment. And what we did as we went along was build adapters, to understand each of the ecosystems. So, whether it be Kubernetes or whether it be OpenStack or AWS or Azure or Google, no matter what you're using, we have an adapter that understands that ecosystem for you. So deployment, the AppFormix deployment itself is fully automated. The adapters understand your environment and import all the metadata into our tool, and then deploy the AppFormix software automatically as well. So it's very quick. Users can deploy it themselves, and they can start to see results within minutes.
And where are you at with this in the wild at the moment? Have you been brought in to put this into operations in various customers? Are you running POCs? Where are you at?
So actually at AppFormix we had a large customer base even prior to the acquisition by Juniper. That customer base was mostly in the enterprise space. There's several public references there. But then since coming into Juniper, of course, there has been this big drive towards taking the software and taking it to all of the telcos. And we've seen some amazing traction there as well.
Sumeet, it's a great story. AppFormix sounds like a wonderful product. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.